Hello everyone, myself Avinash Ojha, and today we discuss about this chapter poverty. Here are some learning objectives about poverty. Meaning of poverty, who are poor, measures of poverty, relative and absolute, concept of poverty line, causes of poverty, government approach to remove poverty, poverty elevation programs in India, critical evaluation of poverty elevation programs. Let us discuss one by one. Meaning of poverty. Poverty refers to a state in which an individual is unable to fulfill even the basic necessities of life. The minimum requirements include food, clothing, shelter, and health facilities. In a country where a big mass of the population is deprived of even minimum amenities of life for a very long period, then such a country suffers from a vicious circle of poverty. Who are poor? Poverty is a great curse on humanity. A poor person lives a wretched life as he is unable to enjoy the barest necessities of life, which makes him morally degraded. He cannot conduct himself as a human being. The treatment that he gets from the society normalizes him. Poverty in India has been studied from the 2 points urban and rural case. In case of urban areas, poor people includes postcard vendors, street cobblers, rag pickers, beggars, etc. They possess few assets and they reside in kacha hutments with wall made of bagged mud and roof made of grass, that bamboo and wood. The poorest of them do not even have such dwellings. In the case of rural areas, poor peoples include landless agricultural laborers, cultivators with very small land holdings. Landless laborers engaged in a variety of non-agricultural jobs or tenant cultivators with small land holdings. Many of the rural peoples are landless. Even if some of them possess land, it is only dry or wasteland. So many rural peoples do not get to have even 2 meals a day. Measures of poverty, relative and absolute. There are two measures to determine the extent of poverty: relative poverty and absolute poverty. First, relative poverty. Relative poverty refers to a poverty of people in comparison to other people, region or nations. For example, if Ram has lower income in comparison to Sam, then we can say that Ram is relatively poor. It helps us understanding the relative position of different segments of the population. It only reflects the relative position of different segment of the population in the income hierarchy. It does not consider how poor the poor persons is or whether he is deprived of the basic minimum requirements of life or not. Absolute poverty. Absolute poverty refers to the total number of people living below poverty line. According to the absolute measures, around 22% of India's population is below poverty line. The concept of absolute poverty is relevant for the less developed countries like India, where there is abundance of poverty. It helps to measure the numbers of poor people. The methods of poverty line used to measure absolute poverty does not differentiate between the very poor and the other poor. Moreover, it does not consider social factors that generate and are responsible for poverty like illiteracy, ill health, lack of access to resources, discrimination, or lack of civil and political freedom. Concept of poverty line. Poverty line is a cut-off point on the line of distribution which usually divides the population of the country as poor and non-poor. The concept of poverty line used to measure that extent of poverty in a country. First, people having income below the poverty line are called poor, and next, people with income above poverty line are called non-poor. Poverty line tries to capture the socially acceptable minimum living standards which the society tries to fulfill. In India, monthly per capita expenditure or MPCE method is used in determining the poverty line. According to this method, monetary value of minimum calories intake is calculated. This method of determining poverty line is updated over time to take care of changes in price levels. There are many ways to categorize poverty: chronic poor, transient poor, and non poor. In chronic poor, it includes people who are always poor and those who are usually poor. Transient poor may be classified as charming poor who regularly move in and out of poverty, like small farmers, and occasionally poor who are rich most of the time and poor sometimes. Non poor, they are never poor. Causes of poverty. The causes of poverty lies in the institutional and social factors, the marks of the life of the poor. The poor are deprived of quality education and unable to acquire skills which enable them to earn better income. The main victims of caste, religions, and other discriminatory practices are poor. The important causes of poverty are population explosion, low level of economic development, poor state of agriculture, high illiteracy rate, high level of unemployment, high level of indebtedness, and last, inequalities of income. Let us discuss it one by one. First, population explosion. Rapid growth of population, particularly among the poor, is responsible for the problem of poverty in the country. It is obvious that when total national income is thinly spread over a large number of people, so the per capita income is bound to be low. Second, low level of economic development. The Indian economy is underdeveloped due to relative backwardness of agriculture and industrial sector, due to widespread bottlenecks in infrastructural facilities and slow pace of development. Nearly 25% of population is still living below the poverty line. Third, poor state of agriculture. Agriculture in India has continued to be backward due to use of primitive methods of production and fragmented small land holdings. As a result, labor and land productivity continue to be low in India. Consequently, most of the farmers live in the state of poverty. Next, high illiteracy rate. The weaker sections of society have to take up low paid jobs due to lack of knowledge. Most members of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are not able to participate in the emerging employment opportunities in different sectors of the urban and rural economy, as they do not have to necessarily acknowledge and skill to do so. Next, high level of unemployment. A large section of urban poor in India are largely the overflow of the rural poor who migrate to urban areas in search of employment and a livelihood. Industrialization has not been able to absorb all these people. Most of the urban peoples are either unemployed or temporarily unemployed as casual laborers. Such casual laborers are among the most vulnerable in society as they have limited skill with no job security, no assets, and no surplus to sustain them. So poverty is closely related to nature of unemployment. Next, high level of indebtedness. Unemployment or underemployment and the casual nature of work compels people to borrow money, that to a higher interest rates. Such indebtedness is one of the significant factor of poverty. Next and last, inequalities of income. The unequal distribution of income and assets has also led to the persistence of poverty in India. Government approach to remove poverty. In Indian constitution and 5-year plans have always started social justice as the primary objective of the development strategies of the government. In all the 5 years plans and policies, the maximum emphasis has been given on the poverty alleviations, and government has stressed the need for various strategies for same. The government approach to poverty reduction has three dimensions. First, growth oriented approach. Second, poverty alleviation programs. And third, minimum needs program. First, growth oriented approach. This approach was initiated from the first 5-year plan. This approach is based on the expectation that effect on economic growth would spread to all sections of the society and will trickle down to the poor sections also. It was felt that rapid industrial development and transformation of agriculture through green revolution in select regions would benefit the underdeveloped regions and more backward sections of the community. However, growth oriented approach proved to be ineffective, but in the last, due to ineffectiveness of the growth approach, policy makers started thinking that income and employment for the poor could be raised through specific poverty alleviation programs. So, second, poverty alleviation programs. This sections, the second approach has been initiated from the third 5-year plan and progressively enlarged since then. The government has introduced a variety of programs for reduction of poverty. The poverty alleviation programs is divided in the two segments. First, self-employment program and second, wage employment program. First, self-employment program. Some of the self-employment program initiated by the government are Rural Employment Generation Program REGP, Prime Minister's Rozgar Yojana PMRY, स्वर्ण जयंती शहरी रोजगार योजना SJSRY, and last स्वर्ण जयंती ग्राम स्वरोजगार योजना SGSY. Let us discuss it one by one. Rural Employment Generation Program REGP. This program was started by the government to create self-employment opportunities in the rural areas and small towns. It was implemented by Khadi and Village Industrial Commission. Under this program, one could get financial assistance in the form of bank loan to set up small industries. Second, Prime Minister's Rozgar Yojana PMRY. Under this program, the educated unemployed from low income families in rural and urban areas were given financial help to set up any kind of enterprise that generates employment. PMRY attempted to generate employment by setting up 7 lakhs micro enterprises during the 8th plan 1992 to 1997. Third, Swर्ण Jayanti Sahari Rozgar Yojana SJSRY. It's mainly aimed at creating employment opportunities for both self-employment and wage employment in urban areas. This program seeks to provide gainful employment through encouraging the setting up of self-employment ventures or provision of wage employment. It is centrally censored scheme which is funded on 75:25 basic between the center and the state. Last, Swर्ण Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana SGSY. Its aim at promoting micro enterprises and to bring the assisted poor families above the poverty line by organizing them into self-help group HSGS. People who wish to benefit from the scheme are encouraged to form self-help groups SHG. Initially, they are encouraged to save some money and lend among themselves as small loans. This has now been restricted as National Rural Livelihood Missions (NRLM). A similar program called National Urban Livelihood Missions has also been in place for urban poor. Second, wage employment program. The government has launched various programs to generate wage employment for the poor, unskilled people living in the rural areas. In these programs are first, Sampoorn Gramin Rozgar Yojana SGRY, second, National Food for Work Program NFFWP, MG Narega, and fourth, National Social Assistance Program. Let us discuss one by one. Sampoorn Gramin Rozgar Yojana. The scheme aims to provide additional and supplementary wage employment by undertaking labor-intensive work, thereby providing food security and increasing nutritional levels. Wage were paid a combination of food grain and cash. The scheme of SGRY is open to all rural poor who need wage employment and desire to do manual and unskilled work in and around their village or habitat. Second, National Food for Work Program. This program was launched in 2004 with the objective of intensified the generation of supplementary wage employment. NFWP was initially implemented in 150 most backward districts of the country to provide additional resources apart from the resources available under SGRY. The program was implemented as a 100% centrally sponsored scheme. Manrega. This program was incorporated in Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in 2005. Manrega aims at enhancing the livelihood security of people in rural areas by guaranteeing 100 days of wage employment in a financial year to a rural household whose adult members volunteer to the unskilled manual work. All those among the poor who are ready to work at the minimum wage can report for work in areas where this program is implemented. National Social Assistance Program NSAP. It was initiated by the central government on 15 August 1995 to help a few specific groups. Under this program, elderly people who do not have anyone to take care of them are given pension to sustain themselves. Poor women who are destitute and widows are also covered under this scheme. In addition to the above mentioned program, some more anti-poverty programs were initiated by the government like Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Gram Udaya Yojana, Valmiki Ambedkar Awas Yojana, etc. Indian government has also introduced a few schemes to provide health insurance to poor people from 2014. A scheme called Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is available in which people in India are encouraged to open bank accounts. Besides promoting saving habits, this scheme intends to transfer all the benefits of government scheme and subsidy to account holders directly. Each bank account holder is also initiated to the rupees 1 lakh accident insurance and 30,000 life insurance cover. Critical evolution of poverty alleviation programs. The policy towards poverty alleviation has evolved in a progressive manner, but hunger, malnourishment, illiteracy, and lack of basic amenities continues to be common features in many parts of India. First, lack of resources. Second, unequal distribution of assets. Third, improper implementation. Fourth, lack of infrastructure. And fifth, lack of active participation of poor people. Let us discuss one by one. Lack of resources. As compared to the magnitude of poverty, the amount of resources allocated for these programs is not sufficient. Second, unequal distribution of assets. Due to unequal distribution of land and other assets, the benefits for the poverty alleviation programs have been appropriated by the non-poor. Third, improper implementation. These programs depend mainly on government and bank officials for their implementation. However, corruption, lack of training, pressure from the local lenders and non-participants of local level institutions resulted in improper implementation of the program. Fourth, lack of infrastructure. There was lack of infrastructure facilities such as schools, roads, power, television, education, training institutions. It is in a poverty stricken area. And last, lack of active participation of poor people. High growth rate alone is insufficient to the reduce poverty. In fact, there is a need for active participation of the poor for effective implementation of poverty alleviation programs. Poverty can in effect be eradicated only when the poor starts contributing the growth by the active involvement of growth process. This is possible through a process of social mobilization, encouraging poor people to participate and get them empowered. However, when the compare the progress of our countries with programs made by many other countries, our performance has not been impressive. Moreover, the benefits of growth and development have not reached to all sections of the population. As a result, even after allocating and spending vast resources for eradication of poverty, we are still far from reaching the goal. Hope all of you enjoy this video. Thank you.